Hi, I'm Dr. Neeraj, MD Homeopathy, working as a Community Health Officer, National Health Mission, and also as a District Internal Assessor, NHSRC, NQAS, Telangana. I also have an experience of working with Dr. Jatin Walia sir as a sports physician for 5 years. And today we'll be dealing with the module called as sports injuries. So the sports module, sports injuries, contains 4 topics. The first one is muscle physiology and biomechanics, sports injuries, and the third one is role of physiotherapy and taping techniques, and the last topic is homeopathic therapeutics. So the first topic that we'll be dealing with is muscle physiology and biomechanics. So the outline of this particular topic, it contains introduction to the muscle physiology, followed by types of muscle tissues, then skeletal muscle structure, followed by neuromuscular junction and excitation, then muscle contraction mechanism, types of muscle contraction, muscle fatigue and recovery, followed by smooth muscle physiology and also the cardiac muscle physiology and factors affecting the muscle performance, and then we'll be seeing age-related changes in the muscles along with the gender changes, and finally we'll be dealing with the clinical applications of muscle physiology. Coming to the introduction of this particular topic, muscle physiology basically it simply means it's study of how the muscles contract. And like you all know, muscle contraction is nothing but shortening of the muscles. And the function of the muscle is action and movement. And we all know muscles belong to one of the major component of the musculoskeletal system. Coming to the types of muscles, we have 3 types of muscles, namely skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. Among these, only skeletal muscles are voluntary, whereas the other 2 have an involuntary mode of action. Coming to the skeletal muscles, they comprise 40% of the total body weight, and it contains 50 to 70% of all the body proteins. So they cover major part of the musculoskeletal system. Now coming to the smooth muscles, which are the structural units of the hollow organs like your intestines, your esophagus, etc. Now coming to cardiac muscles. So cardiac muscle is seen in the myocardium of the heart. Skeletal muscles contract voluntarily like I told you, and smooth muscle and the cardiac muscles have an involuntary contraction which is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. The musculoskeletal system, just an outline of this, musculoskeletal system comprises of bone, muscle, tendon, ligament and the articular tissue. The articular cartilage tissue is the one which is soft in nature, and these are arranged throughout the body to provide internal support and allow motion or movement. Now the musculoskeletal system is an organ system that provides the framework, support, stability and movement of the human body, and it plays a very pivotal role in our daily function, and it means that without the musculoskeletal system we cannot move about. Coming to the structure of the musculoskeletal system or the skeletal muscle per se. The structure of the skeletal muscle, it is connected to the bone by the tendon. The muscle is lined by epimysium. So the muscle is basically a tuft of muscle fibers, and the muscle is lined by epimysium like I just told you, followed by the tuft of muscle fibers which is also called as fascicle. The fascicle is lined by perimysium, and every fascicle contains bundles of muscle fibers, and each muscle fiber is lined by endomysium. Coming to the structure of the skeletal muscle, namely myofibrils, as the image clearly explains that muscle is a tuft of muscle fibers. So every muscle fiber contains its own blood supply and the nerve supply, and the muscle fiber in turn is a tuft of myofibrils like I just told you. So these myofibrils are thin cylindrical structures about 1 micrometer in diameter that run the length of the muscle fiber. Sarcomere. Sarcomere is basically the functional unit of contraction of the muscle fiber, and it is a repeating element within each myofibril. And these myofibrils, they contain thick filaments and thin filaments. The thick filaments are called as myosin, whereas the thin filaments are called as actin. These are the proteins which are responsible for muscle contraction. And there you go, the actin and myosin. The thin filaments are called as actin, whereas the thick filaments are called as myosin. And the sarcoplasmic reticulum is the one which supplies all the nutrition the myofibril needs. And like I told you, sarcomere, there you see in the center of the image, sarcomere is the functional unit of the muscle, and between the 2 Z lines, the area between the 2 Z lines is called as sarcomere. There you see the clear structure of the sarcomere. Like I told you, between the 2 Z lines is called as the sarcomere, and the head zone is the zone which contains the thick filaments, and the eye band is the one which contains the thin filaments. Now, one thing to note over here is titin. Titin is a very important protein. It's a connecting link between the thick filaments and the Z line or the Z line. And titin is said to be the largest protein in the human body. There you see, the thick filaments are made of protein called as myosin, whereas the thin filaments are composed of actin, tropomyosin and troponin. And these filaments or these myofibrils, they are arranged alternately, and that is the reason why it gives a striated appearance. The thick filaments are made of the protein myosin, and the thin filaments are composed of actin, tropomyosin and troponin. And are you seeing the image over there? Very clearly you can see a banding pattern, and this is a clear structure of the skeletal muscle where you can see the alternate bands of thick filaments and thin filaments, and this is called as striation, and hence the skeletal muscle is also called as striated muscle. Let's discuss about the neuromuscular junction and the excitation of the skeletal muscle. Now, initially what actually happens is you'll get an electrical nerve impulse which causes the depolarization of the transverse tubule, mainly in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And this excitation will cause a release of the calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now let's discuss about the sliding filament theory. So in the sliding filament theory, we'll be discussing about a series of events that help in the muscle contraction, especially the nervous component of it or the nerve component. So the first step is action potential. Now this action potential is transmitted along a motor nerve to the muscle fiber. And secondly, we'll see the neurotransmitter which is released called as acetylcholine. So this acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter which is released at the neuromuscular junction, also called as the nerve endings. Now once the acetylcholine is released, then the acetylcholine gated cation channels will be opened. Now once the channels are opened, the acetylcholine gated channels, once they are opened, it allows large quantities of sodium ions into the muscles. You will also have release, along with that you will also have the release of calcium ions. Now once the calcium ions are there, it depolarizes the muscle membrane, and hence you will have release of large quantities of the calcium ions. And these calcium ions, they initiate the attractive forces between the actin and myosin filament, causing them to slide against each other. So once we get the calcium released into the myofibril, so once we have the calcium ions released into the myofibrils, then the muscle contraction would begin along with the help of ATP. So this is how the cross-bridging cycle is. This cross-bridging cycle, it starts when the ATP binds to the myosin.